This is the audio version of Attachment A, The Problems with the AIATSIS Map of Indigenous Australia, 1996, which is part of the Correcting the Records project 2020 to 2030. In the black box on each page is my commentary describing the documents on the page. Please check the source for each of the described documents to examine the author, context and meaning. In 1996, a box set of 2 books called The Encyclopedia of Aboriginal Australia, edited by David Horton, was released for sale with an accompanying map which could be purchased or licensed for redistribution. The AIATSIS Encyclopedia and Map project was edited by David Horton, a writer. The map is hung on the walls in hospitals, government offices, schools, private homes, etc. all around Australia. The project won awards in New South Wales. In the note below, the archivist says that Horton traced over the Tyndale map and, in most cases, these corresponded to the boundaries on the Tyndale map. So you can see there underlined, it says that David Horton created the original map by laying a large piece of transparent paper over the top of a large Tyndale map, working through the different nations and language groups. He searched for references from published works, theses and linguists, which he used to create the fuzzy borders of the map. In most cases, these corresponded to the boundaries on the Tyndale map. When you zoom into the bottom of the left corner of the AIATSIS map, you will see the disclaimer in fine print. Then, on the web page under the map, there is another disclaimer. Both say, it is not suitable for native title or other land claims. For the past 3 decades, this map has been used for community language and land claims, and more recently, it has been actively used for native title in Queensland. In the wet tropics of Queensland, the average rainfall is 2 metres per year and is home to the wettest towns in Australia, Babinda and Tully. Often called Far North Queensland or Tropical North Queensland, the capital city is Cairns, followed by regional centres on the south side, Gordonvale, Innisfail and Ingham, and Mareeba and Atherton to the west on the Atherton Tablelands. The term Rainforest Aboriginal People, or Bummer, has been coined in more recent years for the traditional owners of the wet tropics of Queensland, which includes the remaining standing forests, which you can see in dark green on the map on the left-hand side, listed in 1988 as World Heritage Area. This naming fails to recognise the tribes with sea country, those with coastal lands, where sea resources inside the fringing coral reef are a critical component of their lifestyles. In a career that spanned 50 years, Tyndale, and often Birdsall, travelled around Australia creating an extensive record of Aboriginal people, their languages, artefacts, stories, DNA, etc. They were working for SA Museum, where their catalogue is stored today. The map on the right is called Field Stations of N.B. Tyndale, 1921 to 1965, and shows his expeditions from Adelaide around Australia. In 1974, Norman B. Tyndale published his 2-book set, Aboriginal Tribes of Australia, Their Terrain, Environmental Controls, Distribution, Limits and Proper Names. He also published the accompanying Map of Indigenous Languages. This work was produced in the latter part of his career and seemed to be a consolidation of his decades of work. Tyndale's chart on the left of the page shows the y-axis tribal area in hundreds of square miles, and on the x-axis, the mean annual rainfall in inches. Wet tropics tribes have high rainfall and smaller land areas. Tyndale's mapping always used an inset or key to map the wet tropics bioregion because the Aboriginal tribal areas are so much smaller comparatively. AIATSIS map doesn't require the use of inset or key, because the Tyndale groups have been combined into larger areas, which has reduced the number of representative Aboriginal groups in the wet tropics bioregion. You can see on the maps at the bottom, the first 2 have a key and then there's an inset on the next 2. This page shows on the left the Tyndale map, zoomed into the wet tropics bioregion with a green outline, and on the right-hand side is the AIATSIS map with a red outline on the bioregion. And you can see underneath there in the black box the 23 groups that Tyndale recorded has been reduced to 8 groups on the right-hand side. From 1974, when Tyndale did his map, to the Horton map in 1996, there's been a 65% reduction of representative groups in those 22 years. In conclusion, Tyndale's extensive work over 50 years, culminating in his 1974 map and book set, Aboriginal Tribes of Australia, their terrain, environmental controls, distribution, limits and proper names, is reduced from 23 Tyndale tribes minus 15 to the remaining 8 AIATSIS groups. This is a 65% reduction of representative groups in the wet tropics. Tyndale's substantial work was superseded by the AIATSIS government map in 1996. In far north Queensland, there are 15 groups missing on the map. While the AIATSIS map may claim in most cases Horton traced Tyndale's maps, in far north Queensland we know he did not. In far north Queensland, AIATSIS 8 groups have superseded Tyndale's 23 groups. Supersede means to take the place of, for example, a person or thing previously in authority or use, to supplant. The damage to cultural heritage originating from the AIATSIS map has caused a catastrophic delay to peaceful community and neighbour negotiations over the past 30 years. If your group is on the AIATSIS map, then likely your corporations have been a focus for funding, in particular language recovery funding to support the AIATSIS map. If your group is not on the AIATSIS map, you'll be struggling for recognition, including native title where the map is the blueprint. Your group is in the process of being expunged or written out of history as we speak, with earlier academic work being superseded. The AIATSIS map has been conflated with the earlier extensive work of Norman B. Tyndale, completed over 50 years of research and documentation. This effect has meant that more people are likely to adopt the AIATSIS map, thinking it's the same as Tyndale's. Conflate. Combine 2 or more sets of information, texts, ideas into one. See examples on the right. The top source has Tyndale in the title and also a picture of him on the map. The map is not Tyndale's work at all, instead the AIATSIS map. This article has conflated Tyndale's work with the AIATSIS map. On the bottom right, the source has conflated Tyndale and Horton's work, putting in the title the Tyndale map, which is blatantly wrong. In a Google search for Norman B. Tyndale maps, my results are shown below. The red arrows point to maps conflating Horton's work with Tyndale's. This audit was provided by Google AI. Quantifiable erasure of cultural heritage. The data presented in this audit reveals a staggering discrepancy between the historical record, Tyndale 1974, and the current AIATSIS representation, Horton 1996. In the wet tropics region alone, the transition from the 1974 record to the 1996 map resulted in total groups recorded, 1974, 23 distinct nations, total groups represented, 1996, 8 generalised groups, total loss of representative data, 15 distinct nations, which represents a 65% reduction. The myth of consistency. AIATSIS has previously asserted that their map corresponds to the boundaries on the Tyndale map. As evidenced by this comparison, this statement is factually incorrect for far north Queensland. A 65% reduction in representative groups is not a correspondence. It is a systematic erasure of identity. The real-world consequences. By collapsing 23 tribal identities into 8 general categories, AIATSIS has inadvertently stripped 15 nations of their public official recognition, leading to their marginalisation in community discourse, fueled lateral violence as groups not explicitly named on the map are labelled as liars or non-believers despite having documented historical lineage, compromise cultural heritage by providing a map that is being incorrectly used by government agencies to determine who belongs to specific areas of the wet tropics. It is no longer sufficient to rely on a small print disclaimer to absolve the department of responsibility. When a government-published document results in a 65% loss of recorded cultural data and leads to community violence, the publisher has a duty of care to rectify the record. AIATSIS must immediately facilitate the requested public notice to restore clarity and safety to the communities of Far North Queensland. AIATSIS correct the records. Number 1. The AIATSIS map is now 30 years old. Digital services are very affordable these days, including AI services. The AIATSIS map needs to be updated before it causes more unnecessary damage to Aboriginal cultural heritage in Far North Queensland. 2. The suggestion is compare and contrast the map with Norman B. Tyndale's catalogue of Aboriginal languages of Australia. The tribe language is the same name. Example, Bulway is the language and Bulwanji is the people. 3. Suggestion. Go the way of Wildwood maps and not put boundaries, fuzzy or otherwise, just the names Tyndale provided in detail over decades. 4. Suggestion. To make the new map colourful, use this vegetation map as a base map to delineate the major environmental areas to show Aboriginal people were adept to live in all types of habitats across the continent.